Hey, how you folks doing? It is Wednesday, the 12th. Did I say the 12th? I meant the whatever. Maybe the 18th. I honestly forget. Of September 2025. It doesn't really matter. It is a day, yet another day happening. Um, sorry, just a bit of a blur because I've been dealing with so many different things here. Right now, Israel, if you haven't noticed, is doing something in Gaza. I'm going to get into that in this video. And as always, not as always, but as usual, coming to you live from northern Israel, where we are currently witnessing many events reshaping the Middle East, as it were. And that includes the IDF taking parts of Gaza City. They might even take the whole thing. That is currently the plan. Right now, the IDF is in control of a significant portion of Gaza already. In fact, it's already in control of most of Gaza. And the IDF has already released a map of what Gaza will look like after the IDF takes control of Gaza City and completes the current operation Gideon's Chariot. And, and basically, the IDF will be in control of the vast majority of Gaza and all of the areas that it controls will not be ceded back to the Palestinians. I sincerely hope that means that they're going to annex that part of those parts that are depopulated, because it would first of all add a layer of it would add strategic depth to Israel's security, and on top of that, it will remind people there's a price to pay for effing around. When you start a war against a power that has more power than you, and your purpose in starting that war isn't some justified cause in some humane way. No, you're literally attacking civilians for the purpose of annihilating as many people as possible. Well, when you do that, if the country or army defending itself against you is able to defeat you and take land from you, you should not be surprised if they take land. I mean, look at Russia and Ukraine. Russia began the invasion of Ukraine. And even if you only go back a couple years to the most recent invasion, right, when they started 3 years ago um, in their latest invasion, the full-blown invasion, if you will, if you want to call it that, not just the Crimea. Well, when they started the full-blown invasion, the Ukrainians lost land. And at this point, any peace negotiation discussions are all around getting Ukraine to accept a loss and surrender territory to the Russians that invaded them. I'm sorry, what? That's right. The Ukrainians are the ones expected to cede territory to the Russians. Make that make sense. But that is how it makes sense in history and in the laws of war. You can actually invade a country, conquer land, annex it, and it becomes part of your country, even if you are the aggressor between the belligerent parties, even if you are the one who started the fight. It is possible to take land from countries that didn't do anything to you. Maybe they waved big flags in your face, maybe they offended you, but they didn't actually attack you. It is possible to attack them, take their land, and have it be accepted internationally as your new sovereign territory. So if an aggressor is able to do that, well, then very obviously a defender is able to do that too, because it would make no sense if you would only allow the people who are essentially the offenders to get away with that sort of thing and not the people who were literally just defending themselves, as is the case with Israel. Now, you can say to me, well, Israel's gone too far, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole different discussion. And I don't personally agree that they've gone too far. But I understand the argument because you're looking for proportion. You're looking for proportionality. You're saying, no, once they've killed as many people as the Hamas killed, the fighting should stop. That's not how that works. First of all, that's just not how that works. Second of all, nowhere in international treaties or conventions of law or anything else like that is there any type of agreement that says that countries have to stop fighting once the number of dead is equal on both sides. That's just not a thing. If you think it's a thing, you have like a very infantile, and I mean literally infantile, view of the world and how things actually operate. Hello to you. I see a message from somebody. I don't know what it is. It's deleted. Um, right. So nobody should be surprised if the borders change because that's what happens in war. The fact that the only acceptable changes to the borders, from the Arab perspective, the only acceptable changes are when they take land. God forbid they should lose land. No, then they can never accept it. It's such an offensive superiority complex. It defies logic and reason. But that's the whole point. It isn't meant to be logical or reasonable. It's meant to be extremist. Right? We will rule the world, and any part of the world that we don't rule, we will continue fighting forever until we do rule it. And if we ever lose any part of that world again, then we will fight forever until we get it back. And if we lose it again, we will fight again forever until we get it back. And that's literally the history of Muslim conquests in the last 1,500 years, since the dawn of Islam, right? In 1,400 years, whatever. It's pathetic. Yeah, like it is a superiority complex, which means that there's obviously inferiority happening underneath the surface, right? People are feeling very inferior about their views of the universe, which is why they are that aggressive towards anyone. Because there's no one, if you think about it, nobody in their right mind would hold those kind of beliefs that only they can rule something, and if anybody ever takes back from them anything that they took from someone, they have to go fight for it again, and be like aggressively violent and inhumane in their actions to do so. It's obviously we're talking about a minority of people who follow that particular religion, who believe in that, but it's a very active, virulent, and dangerous minority. If even only 10% of the followers of that religion actually believe what that doctrine teaches, which is what they learn in their religious schools, and what they preach in their mosques, etc. Well, if even 10% of 2 billion people believe in that, it's still 200 million people. And if even just 10% of the Arab world believes it, well, the Arab world is about 400 million people. So you're still talking about 40 million people, right? 40 million people is still a lot of people. Whether you acknowledge that or not, right? It just is. It's a lot of people. So beware, if you will, the exiges of the conquering, colonializing Muslim world that tells you that they're the religion of peace, which is a most laughable thing. You ever notice how that phrase became so popular after 9/11? It's hilarious, right? It'd be funny if it weren't so deadly. Why couldn't they have been the religion of peace? I don't know, 1,500 years ago, and spread that way? They would have done probably a lot better. They believe in conquering. They believe in colonizing. They believe in forcing people to convert into their religion. And when I say they, I do mean the extremists. They're not really extremists though. They're literalists. Yeah, it's anyone who's not a literalist, is going against what they're teaching as the norm, because the norm is an extreme position. The norm of their ideology is extreme, right? Conquering, misogynizing, all that stuff, forcing people to convert, you know, making people dhimmis, which are second-class citizens, making them pay a special tax called the jizya, just to humiliate them, and they have to pay it in a humiliating way, making people, preventing people from having nice things if they don't believe in your things, in your beliefs, forbidding people from, for example, Jews aren't allowed to ride horses in a Muslim society, right? They can only ride donkeys, and they can't even wear, the same shoes or something. They have to. It's just crazy. If you like, we're talking about literal societies. The ones that aren't literalists are not like that. And what's interesting, even more, is that the countries that are currently the most literalist are the ones who themselves have been conquered and colonized by the Arabs. It's like the Palestinians, right? This land was once conquered by Arabs and colonized, etc. And many Jews became Muslims to save their lives, and so did many other people who were living in this land. Some didn't, and either were killed or made into slaves or were forced to accept being dhimmis and paying tax and all that. But the actual areas from which Islam is born, namely Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, which were once part of the whole Araby, that whole peninsula, is actually less extremist, except for like Yemen, obviously, which is pretty nuts. But like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are less extreme. They are not literalists, at least outwardly. They may still be in their hearts or who knows what, but their governments are doing everything that they can. They're they're doing what they can to give off an image of themselves as reforming in some way without actually changing their religion. So they're not being literalists in the sense of they're not saying they want to go out and conquer everybody. They're saying let's make economic alliances, let's build interests that are shared, let's make peace and all that stuff, which is wonderful. But it's the ones that they conquered and brainwashed with their ideology that are in fact the most extreme or the most literalist, really, right? So the originators, or the people directly descended from the originator of that religion, are the least extreme or literalist at the moment, at least within Araby. If you go out further, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., it's even less so. Yes, of course, there are literalists there too. There are crazy terrorists in Indonesia also and in the Philippines. But for the most part, they're very reasonable with their view on the religion. Again, they were conquered, by Islam, and they were forced to convert in many cases, right? That's why there's so many of them out in the East. But they are not part of the Arab world. They are the Muslim world, but not the Arab world. And they're, east of Asia, east of Iran, right? So they're a whole different breed of cats, if you will. And they are not as extreme, even though they may be literalist in some sense. They're not literalist in the sense of global jihad against everybody when it comes to the vast overwhelming majority. There are, yes, still some fringe elements there that are still very dangerous, and they would like to do that. But it's the far, far, far smaller minority that in those areas compared to here in Israel, like immediately surrounding us in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, and in the surrounding countries as well, including Egypt, which is supposedly at peace with us, but it's a very tenuous peace, as well as even Jordan and Syria, right? It's ugly. Anyway, guys, I will catch up with you and talk with you later. Peace.